Hi, everybody. Welcome to Stratosphere Lounge. It's Bill Whittle here, and I am really not up for this one. Might as well just come out and say it. I'm just burned out, tired, and I don't know if there's ever been a time I pushed this button on this show that I just felt like I feel like right now. I just do not feel up for this one, but it's showtime, so here we are. I hope people are doing better than that out there. I don't even really know what's going on. I guess I just tired. And Had a good time on Glen Beck today. That was fun. And other than that, it just continues. We getting pretty close to closing out the cruise. Looks like I think that'll be I think next day or two. I had a great time in Idaho last week, watching Nancy Pelosi on the CNN monitor was surreal. It was just surreal. I don't, it's so strange. I mean, the two speeches I gave up there are just most optimistic I've never felt so good about the country. And Glenn mentioned it in passing just before I went on. He said things are changing. It really is. I just feel like things are just really, strangely enough, like falling apart for them. And I'm not getting enough sleep, I guess. Anyway, that's about it. Yeah, it's funny how that works. It's just I just don't know. It's like I just feel like their whole world is coming down. And anyway, so mostly just tired, I guess. Let me just zoom this in a little bit. There we go. So if everybody else is doing well, I had a real nice time up there. It's just beautiful up there. Got a chance to fly in a King Air in instrument conditions, which was fun. We don't get to do much instrument flying here. I was haven't flown in 3 years, but it was great being in the front seat. Went into actual icing conditions, which I've never seen before. And that's a weird feeling, looking out at the because night flight both ways, and looking out on the wing and seeing the black rubber strip on the front of the King Air. It's a de-icing boot, and it works by when ice builds up on the leading edge, they inflate it, they pump some air into it, it just expands just enough to crack the ice, and the ice goes flashing back into the into the slipstream. And I'd never seen those work before, so it was weird flying along and watching your wings just get whiter and whiter and whiter, and then poof, off they go. Most of the flight out, did an event in Lewiston and flew from Coeur d'Alene to Lewiston and then back. And the flight down to Lewiston, I remember we were 60 seconds into the flight, and I couldn't see out the window, and we didn't really need to. Anyway, the pilot was just a really terrific guy. Great guy. He's the best single pilot IFR guy I've ever seen. He's really, really, really on top of things. And it was fun to be able to sit in the right seat and just be an extra pair of eyes. It was nice to be. It was just very flattering for him to say, "No, you're great. You should do this for a living." It was fun. So yeah, instrument conditions was grand. I loved it, and then the flight back was kind of cool too. Got a chance to stop at a hangar in Lewiston, owned by Gary Peters, and saw I don't know 20 of the nicest airplanes I've ever seen, including a P-51 that was manufactured in 1944 and looked like it had been built this morning. And I used that for kind of nice little close on the speech I did at Lewiston, and then I kind of had a chance to think about that and refine it a bit. So I also did that on Coeur d'Alene the next day. So, well, D.P. Wellman says his fiancee was strong arm mugged in downtown Disney this morning. Is that in Disneyland, you mean? Or Anaheim? That's pretty sad. Anyway, here we are. So, take a look at some questions on Facebook and some on the BillWhittle.com thing. 1:30 in the morning in downtown Disney. Yeah, people are constantly asking me to leave this place, and I see just outside. Yeah, well, it's going to hell in a handbasket here, and I feel like one of those reporters. I feel like was it The Year of Living Dangerously? I guess you're like the last Western journalist in. I guess it was Thailand in that movie, but it's like, Cambodia or something. It's like, oh man. Anyway, I saw a bunch of airplanes here. I saw an airplane that had been actually flown by Charles Lindbergh, a biplane, one that was flown by Amelia Earhart. Some of them were like from 1927, I want to say, the oldest ones. And every single one of them looked like they were built that morning. It's very encouraging, especially if you look at what they look like originally. There's a P-38 out there called Glacier Girl. Right now it's flying. It's been restored over a course of years and years. It looks like it was made this morning. But when you see what it looked like after sitting in the glacier underneath the ice for 40 years, it looked like there's nothing left. There's a P-47 out there that apparently sat at the bottom of a lake, 200 feet at the bottom of a lake in Austria for 40 or 50 years, and that's now the best looking restoration flying warboard I've ever seen. It was amazing, just beautiful. I'm still a little concerned here about the comment section. Our friend D.P. Wellman says his wife was punched in the face outside of Disney. That's really, really disturbing. It's all the theme of the speeches I was giving up there is both of them is that. Well, I was just looking at I called the Cold War America's longest conflict, but it's actually not. It's the second longest. The longest conflict in American history is the Culture War, which probably started around 1967, and is still ongoing. It's at least 10 years longer than the Cold War. And I just was looking around and I realized I think that the war is won. It's not over, but it's won, and we win. And it's not going to be. I know it's a tough thing to. It sounds tough to justify, and I'm sure I'll get a chance to get it down a little bit when I've had a chance to finish up these Cold War scripts and then get on some firewalls again. But I think all the things that the left had going for it in 1967, 68, control of the media, control of universities, control of Hollywood, control of reasonable politics, all that. I think all of those shiny weapons they had are completely rusted now, and I think they gave it their best shot, and I think they failed. They can't sell their ideas even if they wrap them in Star Wars. So it's going to get worse before it gets better. The war in the Pacific was won in 6 minutes on June 4th of 1942. And all the real killing came later. And I watched these people get more and more insane. And, it was a pack attack, a group of men. A girl ran off with his feet. See, I'm just kind of catching up with this story as it comes up. So apparently one of our great friends in Stratosphere Lounge's fiance got hit in the face. And a group of girls, even better. There's again. I know I'm just in a bad mood. That's all there is to it. I'm tired, but nevertheless, I do believe that that this thing is won, and that it's just now it's just a question of the bloodletting, because once somebody realizes that, the Civil War was over at Gettysburg, all the real killing happened after that. The war in Europe was over at Stalingrad, and all the real killing was after that. And certainly the war in the Pacific was won by Midway. And by the end of that battle, the Japanese never once took the initiative again, nor did they ever have any chance to do anything other than surrender in Tokyo. So that's all great. But if my theory is correct and that the war is won, the worst of it's yet to happen. I don't see I don't see how they're going to beat Donald Trump. I don't know how they're going to beat them. I mean, they're just too busy beating themselves. Their entire strategy, the Democrats' strategy, has been to make this all about Donald Trump and demonize Donald Trump. And if that theory was working, if their strategy was sound, there would have been big turnouts in both Iowa and New Hampshire. Big turnouts, because the entire Democratic case was, we got to do something to remove this guy. Well, there's subpar turnouts. And even though Bernie looks like he won in New Hampshire, he got considerably less than he thought he would next door to his home state. I don't think Bernie's going to do super well in South Carolina, personally. So I suspect what's going to happen is, I think Donald Trump's going to win this handily. And then when he does, if he does, they're going to really lose their mind. And we're going to be faced with, I don't think I've ever seen this before in history. I really can't think of another example where social unrest comes from the top down. I don't know what that looks like. I know what street riots look like, and I know what civil unrest looks like, but I don't know what it looks like if the people who actually turn violent are, D-list movie stars and political organizers, and these so-called liberals who are living these cushy lives. They're dangerous and violent. And the Steve Scalise thing, and this lunatic screaming on campus that he's going to slash every Republican's throat he finds, and the whole impeachment thing, all of it. They're just going to really lose their minds. And this is why I'm so convinced that we won. They know it's over. I wish I'd had the sense to put this sentence quite as pithily as I did on the ride home from the final speech up there last Saturday. But the fact is, they can't sell their ideas to anybody, even if they wrap them in Star Wars. So they're going to just really lose their minds. There are, look, it's like anything else, a bell curve. But the leading edge of their bell curve is a lot more unhinged than ours. I mean, a lot more. So, so they don't have the news media anymore. We all know that that's a joke. Hollywood's a joke. Universities are a joke. And all of their weapons are rusted and dissolving away. And they didn't do it. They didn't turn us into them. All they did was just show people that they'd rather walk away from things they love, like Star Wars or whatever the case may be, rather than swallow these poisonous ideas. So now they're going to have to face the fact that not only are they going to lose, but they're going to lose after they thought they had it won. It's like one of these. Well, it's like Midway too. I mean, the Japanese just sailed out there, didn't even. They didn't get the reports that they wanted from Pearl Harbor, but that's no problem, because the Japanese battle plan said that the American fleet would be in Pearl Harbor when they attacked. So that's what the Japanese battle plan said, so nothing to worry about. They've got what the Japanese called victory disease. They were so sure that they'd won, and they were so overconfident and so shocked when Donald Trump beat them. And now they're flailing, and that means they're off balance. And the more off balance they are, then the more mistakes they make. And impeachment thing's a great one. And then once you start making mistakes, the wheels really come off. It's like I've only seen. I watched it happen to the Gators as one of the worst days of my life, but there's something that happens. It's not real common, but it happens. And it's a special dynamic. Um, and the dynamic is something like this. If you ever seen a game where well, I'll just tell you what I saw. When would this be? 97, 98, somewhere around there. 96, somewhere like that. Um, so, uh, so Florida was playing Florida State, and by the time I got into the fourth quarter, we were up by 28 points, a 4 touchdown lead, and we were all feeling real good. And then Florida State scored, and then we're up 3 touchdowns. 12 minutes left or 10 in the game. We'd been kicking their butts, so I wasn't too worried about it. So then then we got the ball and there was a turnover, so then they scored again. Now we're up by 14 points. And now it's getting to be a little, concerning. And then they kick off and they do the onside kick and recover that. Then they score again, then we're up by 7. And watching this thing was like watching it's like watching somebody being dragged off the edge of a cliff with their fingernails in the dirt, just like trying to hang on. And all of that looseness and all of that ease and grace that we'd had through the first 3 quarters when we were just filled with this confidence just evaporated. And then all we did was just decide we didn't want to lose this game. So we played super conservative and just went up the middle, up the middle, up the middle, punt, up the middle, up the middle, up the middle, punt, up the middle, up the middle, up the middle, punt. And ended up tying. It didn't end up losing, but it sure felt like a loss. Uh, and and the reason I bring that up is because I see the signs of that on the left today. I see the signs of that panic, that kind of panic. And when that kind of thing really hits, things can change very fast, very fast. In the Florida game, I will say to my satisfaction that in the Sugar Bowl national championship game against Florida State, the thing happened in reverse. But there are times when, in a football game, times when you think that the teams went in at halftime and switched jerseys in the locker room, and that all the guys who were just so effortless and scoring at will in the first half suddenly choke, and all the people that couldn't do anything right or suddenly just they can feel it. They can feel the momentum shift. They know it. And there is that sense of like, whoa, this is historical. Maybe we can pull this off. And the one side gets more and more excited. The other side gets more and more scared. And that's what I think is happening now. Dave Big Booty says that Dems have had a rotten fortnight, but the thing about pendulums is they swing back. Yeah, that's true, Dave. But the problem is that it's not a 14-day pendulum. It's a 60-year pendulum, and it's swung as far to the left as it's going to go, and it's swung real far left. So I feel it. I just absolutely feel it. I feel the wheels coming off of their side, and all of this came to me as a result of watching the reaction to the pop culture, to Star Wars. It's like these people have these progressives chased people out of society, chased them into video games, wouldn't leave them there, followed them into video games, followed them into the pop culture, destroyed those things or tried to, and left a gigantic vacuum where our cultural mythology used to be. Somebody needs to step into that space and fill that need. But I think Trump's going to win, and I got to tell you, I just think that it's going to get really weird. Our friend Dave Big Booty earlier said it's going to be the shortest civil war in American history, and that's true. And sometimes I think, sometimes the only way I can sleep at night is knowing we got the guns and they don't. That's ultimately it. It's ultimately it. When it's said and done, it's like that is the ultimate comfort. And We're not talking about rounding them up and putting them into camps or putting them up against the wall, because we don't do that. But seeing more and more of it from their supporters, especially Bernie supporters, and I see the murderers and the just the raw fascists, these Bernie supporters, talking about how they're going to, you know, line up Republicans, and just the glee, in their eyes when they talk about sending their enemies to camps, and the glee in their eyes when they talk about taking their opponents and either locking them up forever or chopping their heads off. And I just see these faces, and I just say, I've seen these faces before. This is what the SA looked like. This is what the Cheka looked like. This is what all these totalitarian swine look like. And I'm more and more convinced that it's not the politics turns people into this. It's that the people who have a desire to beat people up and tell them what to do, either one, usually both, end up finding political cover, which is, hey, if you decide to be a progressive, you can dress up in your black mask and your black jacket and your black boots, and you can go kick the living snot out of anybody on the street, and that's okay because they're Nazis. So if I can see what this must have felt like in the 30s, in the 40s, when it happened in the Soviet Union, and when it happened in Germany, and it happened in China in the 50s and 60s. And I can see how all of this must have scared the living daylights out of people. But in this case, it's like they're not going to be pulling us out of houses. And everybody knows it. It's almost like, I swear, it's like, this is actually reassuring too. It's almost like this, we Americans as a people, like the first time in the history of the world ever, have learned, at least to some degree, the lessons of history. Half of us have actually learned the lessons of history and have decided not to repeat them. So for the first time in history, it's like, yeah, this is the time that the political victims have all the guns. And I'm especially proud of the fact that because we have the guns, we're not making the same kind of rhetoric that they're making. If I thought our side was talking about doing this, I'd be a lot more concerned. But I'm not. It's like some historical fluke. The good guys realized you gotta defend yourself, and for the first time we were able to. And I don't want to say the first time in human history. The genius of the founders, and that entire idea of constructing a government that is prepared to deal with tyranny, whether it comes in 10 years or 100 years or 1,000 years, it's just brilliant. They are not going to, this is ultimately it. I mean, sometimes you get a lot of truth from these murderers. Lenin talked about useful idiots, and Mao said that political power comes from the muzzle of a gun. He's right. He's right. And it's just a almost miraculous feeling. It's not like a good feeling. It's just kind of awe-inspiring to think that all of the people doing the threatening are the people that used to be armed, and all the people who are kind and minding their own business are the ones that used to be unarmed. And we've seen how that works out in the past. And I'm not aware of another case in human history, with the possible exception of maybe the Greek hoplites who had their own weapons with them in their own house. Victor Davis Hanson, and know more about that, but I learned quite a bit from him. These farmers were just farmers, and most of them lived outside the city, but they had their armor, they had their panoply of armor, and a lot of it is generations old. Father'd pass it down to son, and it would hang on the wall, and then every 30 years or so, whoever was the strongest male in the family would put this stuff on and go out there and, get into the phalanx and whip the hell out of these people who've been professional warriors their whole lives. And I think that's about the only time I can think of. It's an interesting analogy. I'm going to have to develop that further. I haven't really thought about that before. But the Greek farmers, the Greek hoplites, were essentially militias. They didn't have standing armies. They had farmers, and the farmers all had weapons and armor and hung on their wall over the fire, in a place of honor. And it's like, yeah. And if it started to look like it was getting a little frayed around the leather and stuff, they'd replace it and be ready. So, anyway, yeah. And you can tell a lot about these people too by the projection. It really is a profoundly powerful thing, projection, and it works both ways. We project onto them almost as much as they project onto us. We see things like the Kavanaugh thing, for example, and we look at it and we say, she's clearly lying. Everybody knows she's lying. You look at the impeachment thing, it's like there are no charges here. What Donald Trump is accused of is he's accused of resisting being put up against a wall and being shot, and therefore he deserves to be shot. And we project onto them our own sense of decency and our own sense of honor, and it seems we have a hard time understanding it. It's like this can't be right. It's because we can't imagine doing such a thing to people, but that's all they live for. And I just say, and you think about part of it is projection, and I'll tell you the other part of it is simply preemptive attack. They attacked Trump over Ukraine because it became clear that Hunter Biden was connected to Joe Biden. Joe Biden was connected to the Obamas. Obamas were connected to Clintons. Clintons were connected to the Pelosi's. And the Pelosi's, as it turns out, were connected to Romney. And all of these people have children that are getting, 5-6-figure salaries from this Ukrainian gas company. And there are many, many others out there. So instead of they just have the media, so they just said, all right, well, let's accuse Donald Trump of these things. And I'd better see some indictments, man. I'd better see some indictments. If we win the White House, and especially if we win the White House and the House and the Senate, if we have all three again, and we don't see a list of indictments, then I will be very, very disappointed, to say the least. But in any event, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They're not pulling any of us out of our houses. They're not putting any of us up against the wall. They talk about it, but they're not actually doing it. And I notice that these Antifa cowards are pretty good at beating the hell out of unarmed people. Not just unarmed people, but, gay men and things of that nature. But when there are actual veterans there, you just watch their body language, and it's all of a sudden it's kind of like, they stand a little straighter, and it's kind of a, hey, dude, I respect you, dude. It's like, it's okay. Who was I talking to? Oh, I was talking with my friend Bert Rutan. We're sitting out there on his porch. Actually, we're sitting inside because it was cold up there, and looking out over the porch and out over his backyard there. And he said he had a liberal friend who said that Trump is a dictator. And he said, I don't know how I respond to that. And I said, the fact that he can call him a dictator means that he's not. If he can't do it, then he isn't. If he can't stifle political opposition, then he's not a dictator. And if he can stifle it and is a dictator, then we wouldn't be hearing any of this stuff. When I hear people say, he's a dictator, he's a tyrant, tyrants and dictators put their political opposition to death. They disappear in the night. Ask Bonhoeffer about that, or any number of other people, Solzhenitsyn, all of them. If he can't, then he isn't. That's basically what I said. If he can't, then he isn't. If he can't put people in prison, then he's not a dictator, and he can't, so he's not. It's just too easy sometimes. One of the reasons I'm so just low energy today and kind of sad was just really lost my cool last night. got back from work, I decided to just fly around and scope out the verse and log in there. And the first thing I see in the chat section is somebody saying that that free speech is fine, but no hate speech. But you can't have hate speech, and I just went off, you know. Um, and it's not the right place to do it, and I just got really angry, and it was like, you know, somebody is telling me that hate speech needs to be banned because it's offensive to people, and I try to explain to them, well, I find what you're saying offensive to me, so your speech needs to be banned. I find what you're saying to be offensive, and I find it to be hurtful and hateful, so shut up. And they don't get it. They just can't see it. And I just spent a lot of time in a chat room on a game, just you know, trying to nail this smoke to the wall. I really don't understand how. I just I don't know. It's just I just sometimes I just sit there and I just, yeah, indoctrinated to say the least. I just well, you know what? It's like, um, what do you say? You know, what do you say when you have young Americans who are talking about, no, 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 these things you should not be allowed to say because people find them offensive. And I say, you find them offensive. And you're saying a lot of things I find offensive. And then say, well, you clearly don't understand the Constitution. And at that point, I just kind of lost my mind. Uh, anyway, and it probably doesn't help that I was flying around after that and let it drop after a while. I'm just minding my own business. And the next thing you know, I'm just looking at my shields. And they're getting lit up by this guy. And we were in like this 10-minute dogfight. And I had this big, strong fighter that can't hit anything. And he's just better than me, you know? I mean, that's all there is to it. The kid's better than me. And no matter how hard I try, I just might as well get all of this ridiculousness out of my head. It's just, I don't care. I know I look ridiculous. That's okay. Sometimes I do ridiculous things. But last night I was in there after having had this political discussion, only to have this guy jump me. And then, and I got out of there, but I ran. I was either that or get blown up. And that made my blood boil. I hate losing. I hate it. And it made my blood boil. I honest to God, if I could have found this guy, I would have beaten him to death with a tire iron. That's how I felt. I'm not kidding. I really did. I was just that angry. And then, I have to, watch the rest of this comment stream and stuff. And it was like, yeah, you can either stay there and have him kill you, or you can run away. I took the runaway, and I'm proud of that. That was a smart decision. And then I just stuck with some bizarre ideas, some of which have some merit, but, it's just the whole thing's just, I don't know. It just been a rough couple days. But to get an idea, it's like I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, no matter how much and this, believe it or not, is maybe a metaphor for the bigger world. I'm not trying to bore everybody with all this Star Citizen stuff all the time. But I look at it and I realize, okay, I'm 60. These guys are probably 24. Maybe younger, maybe a little older, but they're certainly faster than I am. And since these vehicles in Star Citizen don't behave like real airplanes, they have their own unique flight system. And part of it is kind of based on real physics, and part of it's not. But the bottom line is it's not a real airplane. If it was a real airplane that actually stalled and stuff, I'd have a good chance of beating these guys. But I don't. And so they're faster than me, and they spend more time on it than I do. And no matter how much I ammo up and armor up, and no matter how much Martin Archer just said I should do 40 push-ups to cool off the anger. That's damn good advice. I wish I'd thought of that last night. This has been bothering me for 24 hours now. Might as well just talk about it, I guess. But there is a lesson in this, a positive lesson, and it's not just applies to the game, although, frankly, right now, that's all I can really think about. And it's just pretty simply this. It's frustrating to be lectured on the Constitution by somebody that not only doesn't know anything about the Constitution, but has it pretty much exactly backwards. But then have that person jump you in a fight where your adrenaline is engaged. It may seem like that's a nutty idea if you're not into video games, but I can assure you that if you are fully adrenalized there. And I just was filled with just this burning frustration. That's it. Um, Aesop for the win. He says I have PTUSD, Public Test Universe, not PTSD, PTUSD. That's a classic line. Aesop, congratulations, you win the internet. But anyway, here's the point. So I'm sitting here thinking, you know, I go back in and I apologize to my wife, you know, because I'm like so, just smoke coming out of my ears. I'm so angry. And I'm sitting there thinking about this, and I realize there's nothing I can do about this. There's nothing I can do. They're better than me. And I can, there's that old line about, age and, what is it, age and guile beats youth and inexperience or something like that. And the fact of the matter is, I'm sure I make a little more money than this guy, and I can afford to kind of up armor and up arm these ships. I can put the best stuff on them. They might be able to as well, but the point is, it's not enough. They're going to win. They're going to win. And that's when I had another. It's not a revelation because I've had this thought before, but it hit me in the guts. It's like this is my entire argument for the entire Aurora Republic military, and the fictional president of the Republic has a book called from from Greek hoplites to the thatch weave, how to beat people who are better than you. And here's what I realized. I realized that I'm probably better than. I bet I'm a better pilot in terms of ship to ship combat. I would say I'm better than 85% of the people in that game. But I'll never be better than the 15%. There's nothing I can do about it. I don't have the time to put into it. And worse than that, I don't have the mental fluidity to basically relearn all of the things that I've learned in thousands of hours of air combat and so on. So here's what I realized, and I think this is an important point, and I know this whole show is kind of a catastrophe, but that's the way it goes. I realized that there's only one way I can get around this. There's only one way that I can consistently go out there and not have to have this sickening sense of being beaten by some punk ass kid, because they will continue to beat me one on one. They will always, if I run into the good ones, they're always going to kick my butt, and it makes me furious. Edward says, has that kid ever flown a real plane? No, he's never done anything. He's never done anything. That's not the point. He's not out there in the real world. If he was, I'd be smugly kicking his ass, but that's not the case. I'm in his world. And then I realized it's like, no, there is an answer to this. And the way that old timers like me can beat people who are more experienced than I am and more skilled than I am. And there's only one way to do it, and that is to never fly alone. That's that. That's just that simple. It's the thatch weave, and I had a chance to experience the thatch weave. I had a chance to experience the emotional impact of it. I'd known about it intellectually. For those of you who haven't heard it before, I mentioned it a few times. But basically, in the early days of the Pacific War, the Japanese pilots had 7, 8, 10 years of experience in China. They destroyed us, blew us away at Pearl Harbor. They went on and took all of Southeast Asia. For the first 6 months prior to Midway, they were just the kings of the world. And then we were sending up pilots who weren't as good as their pilots, and we were sending them up on airplanes that weren't as good as their airplanes, and we were just simply being massacred. And there was no other way to look at it. They're better pilots in better planes, period. You're going to simply lose if you go up against these guys. And so the only answer is really to run away, which I really didn't feel like. And besides, you can't run away. If you're flying air cover over your carriers, you can't run away. You just got to go in there and get your ass kicked. And then along comes this guy named Jimmy Thatch, one of the great, great leaders of any stripe in any service. Just a great natural leader. And legend has it he got out of a dogfight and walked over to the wing of his Wildcat, which is a flying barrel. Big, fat, heavy airplane. Had some advantages. It could take more punishment, probably hit a little harder, but nothing like as maneuverable. And the pilots had no experience. And we're just getting waxed by these Japanese samurai and their little katana zeros. And we're flying along, lumbering. We don't even get a chance to see them half the time. We can't outturn them. They're just blowing us out of the sky. And so Thatch came along with this idea. And the legend has it he walked over to the wing of his big, fat, blue Wildcat and pulled some matches out and put them on the wing. And he said, basically, all right, so here's a single American airplane and here's a Japanese airplane. And whichever angle they meet, the Japanese airplane's going to rapidly outturn you. He's going to get behind you. He's going to light you up and blow you out. And there's nothing you can do about it. You cannot outturn him. Even if you were more skilled, even if you switched airplanes, you still wouldn't beat him. He's a better pilot than you. He's in a better airplane. And then he said, but if you fly like this, side by side, and you get jumped, it doesn't matter what angle you get jumped on. If you start to do this, if you start to do these S-turns like this, what that means is he's going to go after one of the two of you. And then the person who he's going after simply has to evade. He just has to just jink and get out of the way. If you continue to do this continue crossing maneuver, as you turn, he's going to turn inside you. He's going to have you in just a few seconds. But as he's coming around like that, your wingman is coming the other way. He's got a high deflection shot there, enough to probably break him off your tail. Then he can get on his tail. And if he comes after you, then the original lead can turn onto him. And it's this back and forth motion. It's called the Thatch Weave, which is a beautiful coincidence with his name, because Thatch Weave sounds like a kind of a fabric. And Thatch just chalked it out. And he told all of his crews about it, and the crews went up there and they practiced it, and then they got into combat with it, and that was the end of the problem over. It's like, yes, they didn't change the planes, they didn't get more experience, but they had a tactical breakthrough. And that tactical breakthrough kept them in the war until we got better airplanes. By the time we got to the end of the war, we were making better airplanes than they were. The Hellcat was a good airplane. I thought the Corsair was a fantastic airplane. And they never improved the Zero. Well, not until the very end, and by then it was too late. Anyway, this tactical breakthrough worked, and I'm sitting there licking my wounds last night and just boiling in my own juices and thinking, the way to do this is just, I should just never go out there alone. I should go out there at least in pairs. And in that way, if somebody gets jumped, all that guy has to do is go full defensive, and his wingman gets on him. And when he turns for the wingman, then you turn back on him, and then he's in a 2-to-1 fight. Then he's on the defensive. Then the B+ level of skill that I have will be enough to take out an A+ pilot, but not by myself. And when I went into when I finally got to bed on last night, that gave me some real comfort. It was like, so there's a way out of this. And I have no problem with that whatsoever. I mean, it's not like, well, you beat me 2-to-1. It's like, hey, man, I beat you the only way I could beat you. I beat you by outthinking you. So why don't you just go straight back to hell? So now it's a question of finding guys who want to fly regular basis out there and just really practice and get it over with. Do it right. I've been spending a year trying to get this gigantic, huge, heavy fighter called a Vanguard to fight, and you can make it super strong and put big shields on it, and it's big, tough airplane, but the guns are locked forward. You just can't hit anything with it. You just can't. I'm just go up there and, and then I went up and took something lighter and put gimbal things on it with mass drivers and just explodes. So anyway, I really would like to, for those of you who are watching, who are members of the Aurora Republic or part of the Star Citizen thing, I really would like to get into some squadron work and really practice, because I'd like to go out there in identical aircraft types, and I'd like to just mind our own business and clean up bad guys. And if we get jumped by some lunatics, I just love to just do it. So, yeah, I saw what you said there. XNOR attrition 4 on the nose and all the GVSRs. I've tried it. You can't. I was shooting this guy all day. That was a pretty good shot, and it doesn't matter. It's not hitting hard enough. Anyway, I'm not going to get too in the weeds about that. So anyway, I just want I want I want to fly organized for a while. I just want to find whoever out there is interested in turning this into a discipline, and then I want to talk to Foghorn, our Secretary of Defense, and I want to work tactics. And if that means we have to fly in groups of twos or threes or fives or eights or whatever, that's fine. One thing I did realize, and this is the last thing I'll say about this whole subject, but you get, I don't know if it's called target lock or buck fever or whatever you want to call it, but you get to the point where it's like you're engaged in this shooting battle and you can watch your shields going down and you're taking damage and you're just so determined to kill this guy that you're staying on him and you're staying on him, staying on him, and hoping you're going to kill him before he kills you. It's really stupid. And what the hell was I going to say? Just one of those days. Hang on a second. This is actually worth recovering. What was it? Oh, and so you're not only am I fixated on the target. Thank you, Foghorn, but you're just so determined to get this guy. And I realized if you go out there with a wingman and you don't shed that attitude, it's not going to make any difference. You're either going to be staying on this target much longer than you should and taking either enough damage to knock you out or enough to kill you, or your wingman's going to take that damage while you're so busy concentrating on finishing this guy off, and on some dim corner of my ape brain, it's suddenly dawning on me, and I don't know how to the degree that this is taught, and I suspect it's taught aggressively, but it began to dawn on me independently that the only thing that matters on a mission is that your wingman doesn't get hurt or shot down. That's all. That's the only thing that matters is does your wingman come home? That's it. And I think if you could get to that place, and it would take a lot of practice, then I think you'd be tough to beat. If your entire training was maybe we get some kills, maybe we don't, maybe we run, maybe we don't, and maybe I'm going to get blasted, but I'm going to protect my wingman. And if everybody's thinking that way, then needless to say, and if my wingman's thinking that way too, then we'll see. We've been doing this for 2-3 years now, and I just really want to try it. I really want, and not just once. I want to commit to it. I want to get out there and fly I want to fly identical aircraft so that so it's not a ragtag collection. And then I just want to give it a try. Anyway, that's enough cheer for today. Let's see what we got here. I'm gonna swing on over to the Facebook page, and then I'm going to look at the BillWhittle.com thing, and then I'm going to go home. Let's see what we got here. Oh, whoa. Well, I'm just looking at the Facebook page, and as I was about to get to our questions, I see this chart that Holly Sirios posted about about Trump's turnout in New Hampshire. Wow, that's astonishing. In 2020, Trump turned out twice as many people as Reagan did when he was an incumbent, almost twice as many as Clinton did, almost more than twice as many as Bush, and well more than twice as many than Obama. In other words, when Obama went to New Hampshire as the only candidate for re-election, he brought out 49,080 people, and Trump brought out 118,774. My God, I don't want to get overconfident, but Jesus looks really good. So let's have a couple quick ones, then I'm going to just have to call it a night, I'm afraid. I'm just awful sorry about all this, but that's the way it goes. Let's see what we got here. Hang on. Move things around a little bit so that I can read them. Yeah, and Trump rallies are doing real well. And I've also heard that there's an awful lot of Democrats at Trump rallies. I think they're in real trouble. If Trump goes after the black vote aggressively, if he brings Kanye with him to some of these events, it's game over for them. And for a while, too. All right, so let's see. Dave Wellman wants to know, could the phrase "we won the war but lost the peace" be applied to the Cold War, or are we still fighting it, more so home instead of abroad? It's a great question. We won the Cold War, and I think the thing that and again, this is something that just got clear to me recently, like in the last couple of weeks. I think a better way to think of it is not that we lost the peace. I think a better way to think of it is this: as soon as the Cold War ended, the culture war began. In fact, the culture war began significantly before the Cold War ended. That the forces of collectivism had certainly from the 60s decided, and earlier really from the 50s, decided that they were going to undermine this country culturally and mimetically. And by the time we were in the 60s, they'd already started. So the way I look at it now, Dave, is to say that we won the Cold War, and the culture war began before that war ended, and we were getting our butts whipped. And then 2016 was midway. The Donald Trump election was an incredible victory. It was midway. It was like there is no way that really could have happened or should have happened. It was a miracle, but it did. So that's how I look at it now. I look at it as, the tide has turned. We got a lot of fighting left to do, a lot of casualties left to take, but right now I'm feeling pretty good. Hang on one second. Hey, how are you? We're good. Thank you. Okay. Have a good night. Bye-bye. So anyway, let's, Hollywood knows they're finished. They all know they're finished. They know it. They can feel it. That's why they're getting violent and nutty. Our friend Dave Olson, you were on Glenn Beck today. Yes, I was. I had a really good time. But you didn't do one iota of promotion for it here. Isn't it shameless self-promotion one of the best ways to boost the signal? Yeah, Dave, it is. It's going to come as a tremendous shock to many people. Scott Ott probably more than anybody that of the many skills I've acquired over the course of my life, business acumen is not exactly one of them. I just, I'm just been writing scripts since end of May of last year for Apollo 11, and then picked up the Cold War right away. And I just don't have the head for it. It's not a question of laziness or priorities. It's just not something I can do. It's simple, but I can't do it. And it's frustrating to many people and to other people more than me. So, it's a great point. I'd like to do more Glenn Beck. I'd like to get, and I did 5 Red Eyes back in the day, in around 2012, 13, something like that. So I'd like to get on all of that. First thing I have to do is finish up this last script and a half of the Cold War, get that off the plate. Then I have a little more time. I can start worrying about moving things forward. So it's a great point, and I wish I had a better answer for it, but I don't. Susan Speakman, I'm just going to do a couple of these and I'm going to call it a day. In TSL 237, you discuss Bruce Ismay, the White Star owner who survived the Titanic sinking only to be basically outcast from society for the rest of life. Is it time to bring ostracism back as a form of punishment? Because I think that Speaker Pelosi's tearing up of the State of the Union speech last week was an action eminently worthy of shunning ostracism, being sent to Coventry, being expelled from polite society, etc. It's a great point, Susan. You can't ostracize your enemies because they don't associate with you anyway, but you can ostracize your friends. And to the degree that this is effective or not, I think you probably want to email Mitt Romney about that one. Um, I just have to come back to the comment section. Dave Wellman said that it was a great analogy. Trump was midway. Was impeachment Operation 10 go? Yes, impeachment was their last gasp. It was their long shot, last gasp, one way mission, Suicide Express to throw the dice one last time and try and defend the Philippines against the Americans. You're going to send the Yamato out there, which had never sunk anything. Maybe put a couple hits into a destroyer. It's a gigantic thing. Musashi never sank a single thing. And send it out there. We doesn't have enough fuel to come home. We're just going to kamikaze them out and try and stop the Americans one last tie. Hope against hope. It wasn't even hope against hope. They had no chance to do it. None. The same as the impeachment thing. It's a really good observation. So anyway, Mitt Romney's feeling the ostracization and couldn't happen to a nicer guy. I was flying with this pilot, and we were at 14,000 feet, and I couldn't see out the window. It was covered in ice, and I was having a great time. I was just checking instruments and confirming altitudes. Not that he needed my help, but you never know. It's always nice to have a second pair of eyes, making sure that your altitude is higher. It's a bigger number than the numbers on the chart in terms of the ground references. And we were talking about Romney, and since he's a pilot, he's a conservative, of course, because if you're a pilot and you're terribly wrong or stupid, you die. So he was talking about Romney, and he was saying, "Oh, Romney talking about my personal convictions and my personal feelings and all of that." And he said, "Yeah, that's fine, but your job is to be a representative of the people of your state. It's not about you and your personal feelings. You know how the people who sent you there want you to vote. And while I do agree that the individual conscience of a representative is some sort of a final circuit breaker, I guess, I think his point is just really excellent. It's the narcissism of it, just the raw, sheer ego, bitterness, envy, jealousy, all of it. But it's precisely, exactly the same thing that I saw with our other presidential candidate, John McCain, where John McCain could have stopped Obamacare, could have reversed it. He was the deciding vote, had this little grin on his face. I'm the maverick. I'm going to decide the future of the country. And because he hated Donald Trump personally, he went out and sold out whatever principles he claims to have had. He never had any, really, looking back on it. Same thing for Romney. It's just an indication, really. It's just like a post-game analysis. In hindsight's always 20/20. But I'll tell you, you look back on McCain and Romney, and then the things they did after they lost, and you realized what pathetically weak sticks they were in terms of us putting our hopes and the hopes of the country on. So, not only is he's never going to get, the left loved him for a couple days, and they'll go back to hating him, needless to say. No one in the Republican Party is ever going to talk to him again, let alone make deals with him, let alone, negotiate with the guy. He's in his own universe. He's disappeared behind his own event horizon now. Yeah, Dave Bowman says, "Hey, everybody's idolizing Romney now. What about the binders full of women?" So anyway, a lot of people are saying they're ashamed to have voted for him. Me too, but we didn't know at the time. It was just, You didn't really know what you really didn't know how weak McCain and Romney were until Trump came along, and Palin too. Uh, I remember Natasha had been in the country for maybe 2 weeks, I want to say, and we went to watch the first debate with whatever conservatives in Hollywood are left. It was maybe, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 of us, something like that. And we watched that debate, and I think we were 2 minutes into it when Donald Trump launched the first, like, smack in the nose personal attack against her. I don't remember what it was exactly, but it was one of these Donald Trump little snipey comments. And the room just exploded. It was like watching. It wasn't just like watching a touchdown. It was like watching a touchdown when the other team is favored by 40 points. It's like, holy crap! We're not supposed to be able to. We're not that we're not supposed to do it. We're not supposed to be able to do it. We're not supposed to have the capability of doing this. And people just roared, just came out of their chairs, and it was like watching a football game. And it was so we're not just taking hits. We're not just playing defense here. No, we're actually hitting back. We're scoring. We're scoring points. And you know, and it's only once you've seen that you can look back on Romney and McCain and realize just how bad the idea was in general. It's like, oh, here's a moderate. It's like, it's not a moderate. McCain is a McCain is a McCainian, and Romney is a technocrat. And as Jeremy Boring pointed out, in 2012 we had the Tea Party movement, which started in 2009 in direct response to Obamacare, and we nominate the one guy in the entire party who's already done Obamacare in terms of Romney Care in Massachusetts. It's insane, insane. Eric Blake says we should have stood for Herman Cain. A lot of us were ready to stand for Herman Cain. And then I was in a close meeting with some of Herman Cain's top advisors, and they asked me if I would help them. I said I'd be happy to. And I said, but these allegations that have just come out, I want to know before we put our names to this that these are not true. Oh, no, absolutely not true. Mr. Cain's going to fight these. Absolutely. He's going to go all the way to the nomination. It's absolutely not true. And you can rest assured on that. And 2 days later, he dropped out of the race. So, so much for that. Anyway, Romney deserves all of it. I think there's move to. I'm not sure about the details. I think Utah has to actually create legislation in order to be able to recall him. I'm not sure about that. That seems what I remember hearing. But in any event, I hope they do, because it's appropriate for him. And it's just plain narcissism. It's the same with McCain. I'm going to sell out the country just to show that son of a bitch Donald Trump who he's messing with. People don't deserve to be in politics. That kind of childishness belongs in a chat session in a science fiction game. That's where you go with that kind of adolescent anger and childishness. It's not for adults, and you should be ashamed of yourself. And I don't know if they ever will be, but I'm sure Romney. The only thing that's interesting about the Romney thing is, did he expect it to go differently? Not the vote. Did he actually expect that that people would be, swayed by his letter that he personally wrote to every single member of the Congress? Mitt, why don't you do your job? Your job is to represent the people of Utah. What do you think the people of Utah who elected you want you to do in this particular vote? That's your job. Do your job. Nope. So, yeah, the state should appoint senators, and the Senate should be the Senate again, not just the House of Lords. So anyway, there you go. I do find it telling that he reportedly kept asking Donald Trump for appointments or wanted a piece of the administration pie and got turned down. Then he turned bitter. I find the same argument against John Bolton, who I admired quite a bit during the Obama years. And I remember thinking, well, John, if the president really is committing this travesty against the Constitution, and his actions are in fact illegal, immoral, and destroying the fabric of the Constitution, then the time to do something about that would have been while you were in office, and not months later, and not like Hamlet and announce by dropping a handkerchief somewhere from some balcony that you'd be willing to testify if the Senate would call on you or the House would call on you. I might be willing to say a few things if the House decided to call on me. Oh, I've dropped my handkerchief. Oh. If only someone would pick it up. Who will rid me of this troublesome priest? And so it's like, all right, John, if it's that serious, I respect you. I did anyway. Then what you need to do is you need to resign as National Security Advisor. You need to tell the president that you're going to resign, and you need to tell him why. And you need to say, I am utterly convinced that the things I've seen have been destructive for this country, and my patriotism far outweighs my sense of loyalty, especially to somebody who's committing these kind of crimes. This is what he should have said if he believed what he said. And so therefore, I'm resigning, Mr. President. I'm holding a press conference later on this evening, and I'm going to tell them why I'm resigning, and that's it. So, okay. But that's not what you did, John. You just you walked off, you got fired, you didn't say anything. The investigation went on in the House. Maybe you were waiting to be subpoenaed, but you could have simply testified. You could have simply just come out and shown up and said it. I have pretty simple standards when it comes to this kind of thing. This whole legal obligations and legal jeopardy carries no weight with me at all. I know that's unusual, but it just doesn't. I have a pretty clear sense of right and wrong in this regard, and it's like I mentioned earlier. I'm just bringing this up simply to illustrate the example. I think the one person that could have saved Star Wars from being dismembered, there's only one person that could have done it, and that's Mark Hamill. Mark Hamill could have simply said, I'm not going to do this script. I'm not. It's not Luke Skywalker. I'm not going to do it. That would have been the courageous thing to do. And it would have been courageous because they obviously have him under ironclad legal contracts. They could have sued the living daylights out of him, sued him for every penny he's worth. But he could have taken the moral high ground, and he would have won. And if he hadn't been a coward, he knew he would have won. He could have simply said, no question, that you've got the legal right to make that I have to do this movie. I'm contractually bound to do this movie. There's no question about that. There's no question if I fail to do the movie, you're going to sue me. And there's no question that if I fail to do the movie and you sue me, you're going to win because it's crystal clear right in the contract. However, if you don't change this entire script and if you don't make this guy into Luke Skywalker again, I will not do the script. And furthermore, I will tell the fandom around the world that the man who played Luke Skywalker is not going to play this role and is going to go to jail or lose all of his personal wealth because what you have given me is something so far away from the character that I simply refuse to do it. Now, if you want to take that kind of PR hit, okay. I'm not playing chicken with you, and I'm not bluffing. I'm just telling you. I would rather be sued for every penny I have than ruin my legacy like this. See, that's actual integrity. That's character, and that's honor. And that's not what he did. He just went around and bitched about it and cried about it and moaned about it and tried to warn people about it. It's kind of like this Bolton thing. Well, I kind of warned people. I tried to warn people. And, all these whistleblowers, I've been trying to warn people. I sent hints. It's like, if you've got something to say, get out there and say it. And if you get into trouble, then get into trouble, for God's sake. If you really believe it, then act on it, and to hell with the consequences. If it's the right thing to do and you're sure you've got the truth on your side, then stand up and speak the truth. But no. And when they don't, that tells me there's nothing there. It's what it does. It tells me that no, if this was really a constitutional, life-threatening abuse of power, you would have stood up and said something. And for you to say, well, if I had, there would have been legal consequences. Well, the hell with the legal consequences, man. You know, this is a question of right and wrong. It's not a question of legislation. Same for you, Mark Hamill, you miserable coward, you whiny crybaby. You know, this is not right. This is wrong. This is against everything that Star Wars is. It's nothing like Luke Skywalker. You're right. Who can possibly do anything about this? You can. You can simply refuse to do it. And you can tell them, if you decide to go after me for refusing to do this script, I will go to the fandom. I will go over your head. I'll go over the heads of the courts. I'll go over the contract. I'll go over all of it. And I'll go directly to the American people or the fandom or whatever, and I'll tell the truth. And that'll be it. Okay? And I will suffer the consequences for my actions. I'm aware of that. I understand that. I'm not asking to get forgiven. I'm not asking to be let out of my contract. I understand I'm going to pay a big price for this. But, and Eric Blake says he's a true lefty. It's nothing to do with left and right politics. It has to do with fundamental courage and integrity. And that's when I realized that Mark Hamill is not Luke Skywalker. And this is the thing that we just constantly forget. Harrison Ford called Donald Trump a son of a bitch. And it's like, oh, that's disappointing. But it's not really, because Harrison Ford isn't Han Solo and he's not Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones wouldn't have said that, but it's not Indiana Jones. It's an actor. They're not heroes. They're children. You know, they're children, and they've got a look and a sound, and I think I mentioned this in the members only thing on formerly members only right angle on Fallen Idols. It's like, you don't feel bad when an actor gives a political opinion like Joaquin Phoenix. If Joaquin Phoenix came out against Donald Trump, I wouldn't particularly care, because Joaquin Phoenix is an actor. He's an extremely good actor. He's by far the best actor I've ever seen. By far. He's in an entirely different category than anybody else on this planet. He made Philip Seymour Hoffman disappear when they were on the screen together. He's the best actor I've ever seen by an order of magnitude. And if he came out strongly opposed to Trump, I wouldn't care very much. You know why? Because I don't identify with Joaquin Phoenix. He's such a good actor. He's played so many different roles. I don't know who he is, and I don't really care. But Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford and Tom Cruise and Matt Damon are movie stars. And the reason that they're not actors, that they're all good actors. Tom Cruise a little on the edge, but the rest of them are really good actors. And the reason that it's different is because Harrison Ford, as an example, always plays the same guy. He's always the same guy. And you like him. He looks like an all-American guy. He's got a manly voice. He's got a cool attitude. You like him. And he's always the same guy. And so when that guy comes out and says something like the president's a son of a bitch, it's like you think, I've been betrayed. You've been betrayed. You've been fooled. You thought you knew him, but you never did. Yeah, Dave Wellman says his acceptance speech was one of the worst Oscar speeches ever. Was he drunk? I don't know. I didn't see it. Nobody saw it. But if he was drunk, I don't care. And furthermore, the fact that he cannot speak in public is an indication of how brilliant he is. I know that's an odd thing to say, and certainly an indication of where my IQ level is, because I'm very good speaking in public. But in any event, he doesn't have to be a good public speaker. To be as good an actor as he is, you have to essentially have nothing inside except the ability to change color. And so movie stars are like that. And that's why when they say something you disagree with, you feel hurt. It's like you feel like you knew him. So anyway, that's just that. Which brings us to our next question. From Eric Blake. Hey, Bill, here's something. So in last Sunday's Oscars, Brad Pitt expressed dissatisfaction with the Senate's refusal to bring in John Bolton to speak. Now, I found two things interesting about this. First, Pitt expressed dislike for the one thing, nothing else. Many conservatives, including the great Ben Shapiro, have done the same thing in agreeing that Trump's innocent. Second, the few times Brad has talked politics, well, he's pro-gun, and B, was game to star at Atlas Shrugged at one point, so is it wise for conservative media to trash him, as I've seen quite a few doing? frankly, all the signs point to him as one of the good guys. I thought he was one of the good guys too, and I think in the relative spectrum of things, he's one of the better ones. But I mentioned him and Harrison Ford both in the show. You are not unaware of the consequences of this, Brad. You know, you're not. And I don't, I mean, I have had certainly been quite a long time since I've seen him, but there were several years when I was pretty close to Jon Voight. And Jon Voight, of course, is the father of Angelina Jolie. And Angelina Jolie, he sent her a number of my videos, and she really liked them. And so I feel like Brad Pitt's basically a good guy. I think he's an all-American guy, and I don't think he's a lunatic liberal in the level like Michael Moore or any of these other people. But the fact of the matter is, you knew when you said this is your best actor Oscar. It doesn't mean anything like it used to because their weapons are essentially gone. But nevertheless, for you as an actor, this is the high point of your career. And you made a decision to put a marker down. You didn't have to, but you did. So I suspect a lot of it is peer pressure. I don't know to what degree it has to do with Jennifer Aniston and stuff. I don't know, and I don't care. I do think it's fair to trash him. He made a decision, and now here's the results of your decision. There's another person on the list of people I just don't want to see anymore because you couldn't keep your mouth shut. You know, I go to the supermarket or something, or I go to a dentist. I don't stop. I don't find myself in the chair thinking I got to get out of this chair because my dentist is telling me about his politics. I have an excellent dentist, and see, if you look at the old Stratosphere lounges, you'll know exactly how good he is. I don't know what his politics are. I don't care. And that's how it should be. And that's why Hollywood doesn't matter anymore. I'll get all this a little more boiled down and refined, but basically the point I was making is the news doesn't sell news. The news sold credibility. They traded in that was their product. They sold credibility. So they destroyed that brand because they no longer sold credibility. They started to sell indoctrination. Hollywood used to sell entertainment, but they destroyed that brand because they stopped selling entertainment and started selling indoctrination. Universities used to sell education, but they destroyed that brand because they no longer sell education, they sell indoctrination. And politics used to be about solutions, but they've destroyed that too. Now the politics are about indoctrination. And if it hurts Brad Pitt's career, I hope it does. I really hope it does. I like the guy. I thought he was great in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I loved that movie, loved it. And the more you know about the Manson murders, the better you like that movie. But and the better you like Tarantino. It's the most inspired. So I'm not going to give any spoilers, but honestly, if you want to see what a director. If you want to see a film where the director has decided to please his audience, imagine the shock of that, huh? Not pander to them, not make it easy, not like just fan service them. But if you want to see a director, a really highly skilled individual, writer and director, if you want to watch somebody with a very, very high level of skill go to a great deal of trouble in order for his audience to feel euphoric, then you really have to see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And the more you know about the Tate LaBianca killers, the better you're going to like that movie. That movie blew my mind at the just the sheer raw guts of it, of Tarantino. Just the fact, it's just gives you an indication how far things have fallen. Just the fact that the guy was went to go to so trouble and so skillfully set you up for just this absolutely euphoric switch. I'm so sick, and all of us are so sick of 50 years now of expecting something good to happen, then something really bad happens. Oh, look, it's a twist. Oh, great. Okay, thanks. I feel like I'm punched in the face. But in this movie, the thing at the very end is a twist, and my God, it's like I just I feel like I just want to fly out of this. There's the greatest thing I've ever seen. This is what should have happened, and the courage, just the moral courage, not only to break rules to that degree, and Tarantino still to this day has done he's done the single bravest thing I've ever seen in movies. He's done the single most courageous thing I have ever seen in films, ever. And he did it in Pulp Fiction. I've never seen anything like it. I don't expect I'll ever see anything like it again. It knocked me out of my chair. And the reason it knocked me out of my chair was because it was so small and so simple. I've never seen anything like it before or since from anybody ever. I don't know if any of you can guess what it is. I've talked about it before. I'll just get it out there before the comment section rings out. There's a scene in Pulp Fiction, which is a gritty, realistic movie with beautiful, 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 beautiful dialogue, and absolutely engaging, and absolutely stylized, but definitely realistic. There's no special effects in the movie, nothing like that. And there's a scene where John Travolta and Uma Thurman pull up outside Jack Rabbit Slim's in this red convertible. And he's saying, I don't know if we should go in there. And she says, don't be such a square. And she does this with her hands, don't be such a square. And he puts an actual square on the screen. I mean, there's like a white square on the screen where don't be such a square. And she puts her hands down, and there's the square. I lost my mind. I couldn't believe it. It was so bold. It was so playful. It was just so daring. It was Dave Big Booty says it was a rectangle. Are you an engineer, Dave? I never really did find out. Um, uh, I've never seen anything like it, and I just sat there. First was like, why did he do that? I mean, he just completely broke the whole, suspension of disbelief, and broke the whole fourth wall, and made himself aware, and made me aware I'm in a movie, and all of this stuff. Why did he do it? And then I realized he did it because he wanted to. He did it because he wanted me to suddenly just wake up to the fact that I'm watching a movie. It's just genius, genius. And we saw a little bit of what he did at the end of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood in Inglourious Bastards. But this was an order of magnitude beyond that. And by the way, whatever you may think of them as individuals, and I don't think much of Leonardo DiCaprio, and I don't. I liked Brad Pitt quite a lot. I like him considerably less now. But I'll tell you something. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a movie about two actual men. And I kept waiting for okay, where's the gay part going to come in? Where is this going to come in? It never comes in. They're just two friends. One guy's a kind of a tough guy actor. He's not a modern actor. He's like a John Wayne kind of actor. And the other guy is his stunt man. And they're just good friends. And that's it. I don't get a lesson. I don't get a morality play. I don't get what I'm supposed to think, and I don't get any of that stuff. It's wonderful. I love that movie. Love it, love it. Speaking of films, I just stumbled on. I wanted to see this in the theaters, but I knew Natasha really wouldn't like it very much. And then I forgot about it, and then I stumbled on some clips of it. And the thing I want to see very much is The Lighthouse, because not only is it shot in incredibly lit black and white, and not only is Willem Dafoe, there's a style of acting. This is the antithesis of Joaquin Phoenix's style of acting. Joaquin Phoenix, I watch him in movies, and I'm not trying to, outrank anybody, but this is what I went to college for. This is what I do. I watched him, and I simply could not see him acting. I just couldn't. I never saw him acting in Joker. I never saw a moment of him acting in The Master. He's unbelievably good. And the antithesis of this, uh, in, and it's also excellent, it's not like bad acting, it's just another style of great acting, is Willem Dafoe in The Lighthouse. There's a scene, and he's got the beard, and I don't know, looks like it's 1826 or something. Robert Pattinson looks really good in this too, really believable. I think he just got a bum rap with the whole Twilight thing. He's a really good actor. Anyway, I just checked. If you look on YouTube, you'll find some clips from Lighthouse. Uh, there is a scene where he gets really upset because Pattinson says he doesn't like his cooking. And he's got this beard and he's got his eyes and he's Willem Dafoe and he's lit from beneath and it's black and white. It's not just black and white. It's black and white in the old 4:3 format. It's in the old school, much squarer looking frame, not nearly as wide and high in aspect ratio as we have today. And Talek says, has there been a movie made since 2008 that does not have a gay scene in it? Yes. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Oh, it's good to see you, Telex. I saw you in the other alternate universe. Anyway, so Defoe has the scene where he curses him, and it's not like curse you, it's like, oh Neptune, god of the sea, and he stands up, and the curse, the actual curse itself, the invocation of the curse, is probably 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes long, and it's just this insane lighthouse keeper with this beard lit from below, and nobody has a face like Willem Dafoe. He's a superb actor, and he's acting. It's not like this is like the kind of comment that somebody would make just offhandedly, but it is so perfectly consistent. It's so well done that you watch him and you just think, my God. It's like music almost. It's almost like music. It's like just the mechanics of it, just the sheer pleasure of it, the sheer joy that you get watching some. It's not a happy scene. It's not. It's just like he's invoking the god of the sea to basically remove this guy from memory, from human memory, because he says he didn't like his cooking. And it's just absolutely epic. And then when Pattinson comes back with the response, I laughed out loud, which is not terribly common for me. And so, anyway, yeah, I don't know. Defoe is great, and I don't think he's ever been better. If you want to have some fun, I don't think there's any spoilers in it. I'm going to watch this movie one way or another. And I haven't seen the Midway movie yet. I'll watch that too. They're both on video now, or will be soon. But just look up Willem Dafoe. Great. I think it said greatest acting moment or something. It's spectacularly fun. It's just fun, and that's the thing too. It's like nobody when they're. I haven't seen the movie, but I've seen a few clips from it, and The Lighthouse is really interesting to me because nobody takes it seriously, and at the same time, it's 100% believable. I don't know how else to put it, really. It's a great example, and maybe the best example I've seen in a long, long time, of a filmmaker's ability to create a world unto itself, and that world is a combination of lighting and set, pacing, construction, all of that. And when you go to the trouble to put a set like that and put over the lighting, the music, all of it, you create this world that has its own internal rules. And once you set those rules, as long as you don't break the rules, are you listening to me, Ryan Johnson? Are you listening, J.J. Abrams? If you set up the rules and then you stay true to your universe, you'll buy anything. And the acting style is appropriate for that story. It's appropriate for two guys in the 1800s in a lighthouse who are going completely insane. And and there it is. Two things from the comment section, then I think I'm just going to call it a night, folks. I'm sorry I didn't get to the BillWhittle.com page. I'll go with that first next time. Somebody mentioned Eric Blake. Turns out it mentioned that Robert Pattinson's going to be the next Batman. I heard that a couple weeks ago, and I thought, oh, that's going to be pretty freaking awful. And then I saw him in The Lighthouse, and I thought, no, actually, now that Eric brought it up again, I thought, come to think of it, he'd probably be very good at it. He does a great American accent, and he doesn't look anything like Sparkly Guy in The Lighthouse. So I recommend that film highly from what I'm able to see. And then the second thing I just saw was where did it go? Oh, Dave Wallman mentioned a movie called To Live and Die in L.A. It was a movie that Willem Dafoe was in many years ago. And To Live and Die in L.A., I haven't heard that movie mentioned in a long time. But I'll tell you one thing about To Live and Die in L.A. I'm going to go ahead and give the movie's 30 years old now or something. To Live and Die in L.A. has another one of those moments. It may come close to the Tarantino box on the frame to just literally gobsmack you. Just gobsmack you. Bam. Like, what? That movie spends the first 2/3 of the movie. It's a cop story. It's a buddy story. And these two cops are working on a counterfeit ring, if I remember correctly. Maybe their Secret Service are working on a counterfeit ring, if I remember correctly. But it's a buddy film. And you know how buddy films work. And sometimes, in fact, often, at the end of a buddy film, one of the buddies will be killed. That's it. But this thing, you're having a confrontation in a locker room, and you're like most of the way into Act 2. All of whatever loss you're going to take is going to happen in Act 3. And you're in this locker room, and you got these two cops and this guy pulls out a gun and shoots one of the main characters in the head, and he's gone. And it's not that that kind of thing doesn't happen, but it doesn't happen then. The timing was so bold. It was just bold. It's like you think what you're going to get. You're going to get a buddy movie. Maybe they'll get together and survive it. Maybe they won't. Maybe one of them will go and we'll have that whole sad scene, But we'll be set up for it. If they're going to lose the good guy, if we're going to lose one of the good guys, then they're going to do what they always do, which is you're going to have the two buddies in a gunfight, and one of them's going to try and sacrifice himself for the other, and he's going to get killed or he's going to get shot, but not before he has a chance to say some final thing to his buddy. We all know how this dynamic works. And this thing was so powerful because it's so much like real life. It's like he's sitting there talking, guy pulls out a gun, he's gone. That's it, period, done. Boom, no last speeches, no, nothing, gone. Just shot in the head, mid-sentence. Wow. Absolutely incredible. Yeah, Departed did it as well. That was a real shocker in Departed. But even in Departed, it wasn't the same thing, because in Departed, you're at the end of the movie. It was a great shock and a great movie, Departed. Great movie. Anyway, so that I think it's 7:35. I think that'll do it for a particularly tempestuous, stormy, and somewhat dark Stratosphere Lounge. Just ranting of a guy who's losing his mind. I think I'm going to audition for Lighthouse 2. Lighthouse 2. The Relighting. Yeah, sold. I'll put $30 million behind it. That'll do it. I'm going to go home and get some sleep and try and get some rest over the weekend. I'm sure I'll be in better shape over next week. It's just a lot of traveling and all the rest of that stuff. So anyway, that'll do it. And if I see that guy again in Star Citizen, I thought about this last night, and I thought about it especially this morning. If I see that kid in the morning who I saw earlier, I will find a way to instant message him, and I will apologize. That's what I will do. I will apologize, and I will tell him, hey man, I'm sorry. I just walked in and hit me the wrong way, and it was completely inappropriate, and it was the wrong place to do it, and I'm sorry I was being such a dick about it. And then I'll feel better. Then I'll ask him, if he can teach me how to be a better pilot. That ought to blow his mind. Mine too. All right, guys, that'll do it. Thanks for bearing with us here, and I'll get this up right now. And I guess that'll do it for this edition of the Stratosphere Lounge, brought to you by the paying members at BillWhittle.com, for whom we are eternally grateful. And we will see a bunch of you on the cruise. I think there's a couple more days until they close that out, so we'll do a kind of a last minute sort of a, not like last minute, but last pitch for it, because we're going to have a lot of fun. Okay, so I think I'll do it. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week right here on Stratosphere Lounge.